How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. What about yourself?
I'm doing well. It's been a bit of a crazy morning.
It has indeed. Every morning is a surprise in our world.
Yes, exactly. We're here at the Darcy in D.C. Thank you for giving us this room. So you're coming in from London all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It was like a last minute thing you let me know.
Yeah.
And you're here for what exactly, if you want to explain?
Right. I live in Britain, but I'm originally from Brazil, and found out a couple of weeks ago that there would be a possibility for the Brazilian, some of the Brazilian congressmen and women to come over and denounce about what's going on in Brazil, what has been going on for a while in Brazil. And we were invited. When I say we, is because although the invitation was for the parliament members, I believe there is in the interest of every Brazilian since they represent us. So we were invited to go into the American Congress and explain to the parliament what's going on in Brazil right now, which is we have been going through few years of tyranny. There is no other word other than that. And it's coming exactly from the place where we should have trust and believe, which is the Supreme Court. The justice system is actually acting unlawfully because they are not following our laws that should protect or persecute those that do not follow the rules. And that hasn't been the case. They have been persecuting, they have been censoring journalists, they have been imprisoning people. And when I say people, I'm talking about ordinary people. I'm talking about old women. I'm talking about people with disabilities. I'm talking about, there is a case of a homeless person. There is the case of a dog. And I'm talking about the animal and even children. All because on the January the 8th, 2023, last year, these people went into Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil, and stood outside the Congress and were just praying, singing, and demonstrating that they were unhappy with the escalation from the justice system that was not respecting our rules.
Right.
So we came here with this idea, and 3 days before the agreed date that we all would go to the Congress, we received the information that our hearing has been cancelled and postponed. And that came from a representative from the Democratic Party.
Get out.
Yeah, I'm saying the truth. It came from the Democratic Party, and it could have been from the Republicans. That's not the point.
Right.
What became really obvious is that all the suspicion about the Democrats, the Brazilian left, the world left, is true. They work together because we have been left under the serious impression that it has been communication directly from Brazil, from the justice system there, that works for the left. They have been placed in the justice system by leftist politicians. They got in touch with the Democrats and asked them to cancel our meetings.
Well,
I am sorry about my introduction, but, it's got to be said.
And by the way, I don't even remember what this is. Some sort of toast with salmon on it.
Yep. and I am hungry, so anything
Anything will
goes.
do, yeah. So, and so for people who may not be familiar with yourself, if you want to just like give a quick background, like how did you end up, because you weren't always in the media, just like myself. So
Yeah.
how'd you end up here?
I'm an academic, and I've worked as a lecturer for many years and researcher. So I've always been interested in facts and studying deeply the facts. And back a few years ago, many years ago, I saw, at the time we were in Brazil under the governance of Jair Bolsonaro. And I was at London Heathrow, which is the airport that we have, one of the biggest airports in the world, about to fly to Brazil. And I sat down, my flight was delayed, and I checked the news. And it was mainstream media that was showing a video of President Jair Bolsonaro talking about, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was talking about the Amazon and the fire in the Amazons and what he was doing, and how Brazil has been under the leftist regime for decades. So he was the first conservative president that came into power, and he disclosed to everyone what truly happens within the country. So he was talking in Portuguese, which is my mother language, and there were subtitles in English. And I was watching that, watched the whole thing, and took the plane, arrived in Brazil 11 hours later, just in time to sit down at home at the table with my family and put the telly on, as you do, for breakfast. And I witnessed with my own eyes the mainstream channel in Brazil. Can I say the name?
Sure.
Yeah. It's called Globo. And there are Global News, and they send, they are the main ones that send the information to BBC, CNN, all the leftist medias across the world. So I watched the video that I watched the night before, totally changed. They've manipulated what was being said, because I had the opportunity to see the night before. I was shocked. I've been living in Britain for 24 years. And that for me was the moment that I thought, what's going on here? If I'm not mistaken, I think it was back 2017, 2018 when he got elected. And I thought, I cannot watch this and be quiet. Because on social media, I was just sharing my life and my opinions about whatever I wanted. I, could be talk about places, history, whatever. I was always giving my opinion. But that moment was like, it turned the key to me. And I was like, I can't sit down and watch this. And I thought to myself, what can I do? So I started speaking in English, showing what was happening in Brazil and telling my audience in English what was truly going on.
Yeah.
And then I used to put the subtitles in Portuguese, but before I used to be mainly English and would write in Portuguese. And that escalated to the point that the first conservative radio in Brazil, Brado Radio, they called me, they got in touch and said, we want you as a political commentator. And that was a bit of a shock, because I was just curious about politics up to then. And I knew politics by studying, would have a chat with a friend.
Right.
We got to remember that was pre-pandemic, when we were still allowed to say a lot of things.
Right.
And then I took up on the challenge. I said, well, if I can contribute, I will do it. But I saw the escalation of what is truly going on in Brazil and in the world from then on. So that's how it always started. And then before I knew, it's all that I do. I wake up thinking about politics. I go to bed about politics. And and my private life and what I do in terms of my career is a bit different from that. But I'm seeing everything with a different pair of eyes. Even my PhD, I changed because of what I am doing over the last few years. I decided I will rest this thesis. I don't want to do this anymore. And I would like to check things from a more cultural perspective. So that's how I ended up here.
That's interesting that you, because we kind of talked about this before, your transition into media. It's very similar to me. I wasn't a political commentator, but I paid attention to what was going on. And I had been paying attention to politics. I'll be 40 this year. I've been paying attention at least intensively since my mid-20s.
Okay.
So whereas like a lot of people I notice who are in this, their political relevancy is rather short. Maybe, especially in America since Trump, whether when he started running for office, they started paying attention, that kind of thing. But mine goes back, like I remember George W. Bush going into Iraq and then going into Afghanistan, basically at the same time. So I remember all of that. I remember the vibe that everything was going on. I remember how they were depicting him and everything. And then I just really started paying attention, like understanding like what is a Republican, what is a Democrat, like in my mid-20s. But I really started waking up just prior to COVID, like in 2019, but just by happenstance, But something pushed you, and something pushed me, and that was the lockdowns and George Floyd, like all that stuff at the same time. That was the push. So when I got pushed, I was ready, just like when you got that push, you were ready. And people recognize that right away, that they want to hear what you have to think, what you think about whatever is going on. I guess for me, like I'm curious as far as in Brazil, because I know, actually, quick question. How many political parties are there in Brazil?
Well, a lot.
Okay.
But basically, we have the left and mini leftists. We don't have a proper right-wing conservative party in Brazil. We have a lot in the middle, we've got the left, but they all follow that agenda. And this is also is something that I need to make very clear, because whoever gets associated with President Bolsonaro becomes what they call Bolsonaristas, which would be the equivalent to Trumpists.
Trumpers.
Yeah, Trumpers, something like that. And I, Jamile, I have no loyalty towards any politicians. It's very clear to me that they work for me.
Right.
But I do have towards him a lot of gratitude. Him, Jair Bolsonaro. And admiration. Because prior to becoming president, he worked in parliament for 30 years. And there is not one misbehavior or anything that can be questioned in terms of his conduct. And because if they were, trust me, they would have him arrested even for a parking ticket, because that's what they're trying to do right now.
Right.
So I feel that was like my duty, moral duty. I'm a mother. I need to be an example, first of all, to myself, because I think that's how we lead, by example, but to my son and to everyone that I love and care. I live in the UK. I'm not in Brazil. I'm not living under installed communism, because that's how they are living right now. And the misconception that people still have is that communists are going to come to you and say, hi, you are now living under communism.
That's not what they do?
That's not what they do. Check what they call China, Republic of China. How they call Cuba, Republic of Cuba. They're never going to confess what they are doing. And I could clearly see what was going on in Brazil, because I was outside the bubble. I was not there. Because you do get consumed when you have everyday demonstrations of tyranny. You get used to it. So seeing this happening with the pandemic, and seeing how the media was behaving, we were fighting against them. We, the people, they thought something here is fishy.
Yeah.
It's not good. I felt like, okay, they are not going to tell the truth. I will. And like myself, you did, and so many others did. And I believe that's perhaps why we now have an army of people that maybe don't know how to do it. Maybe they're still being censored, which is the case of Brazil. We have here in America several journalists that are applying for exile because they are being persecuted. And the crime? Opinion. We have currently in this country a judge that refused to play by the rules, not our constitution. They are ignoring our constitution. The fact that she stood up against them, they exonerated her, they removed her job, and now she cannot even have access to her money, to her wage, and she's living currently in the US. So that's pretty much how it is. And communism, like when you say how many parties do you have in Brazil, which was your initial question, we have left and little lefts. That's what we have. And that's how they operate, because they're not gonna, what do they do? How does Maduro in Venezuela operates? How in Cuba operates? How in certain countries like, I don't know, Russia, suddenly the opponents that dare to stand up, well, they disappear. They disappear in different ways, manners, and because that's how they do. They do not want to sit down and have a conversation where you can put your ideas and the other party can do the same. Let's say a discussion between right candidate and a left candidate, we can both discuss what they are intending to do with their people. They don't want to do that, because the moment that they do, we, the people that have morals, that we want to just work, we want to have our freedoms, we want to be able to worship whoever we want to worship. We want to be able to raise our children the way that we want to raise our children, and we want to abide to the moral rules. I want to respect you. I want to respect your right to carry a gun. In Brazil, you have no rights like that anymore. And the world are not aware of it, because no one can imagine. We're talking about the 5th largest country in the world is Brazil. But what you hear in America, as it is the case of the UK, is the lies that these, especially the Supreme Court, the justice system, are running our country, because they are all working with one desire, funded by a group of individuals that have the interest to make the whole world slaves.
So actually, I wanted to bring up, well, one quick question. Like in the United States, they say like, they try to paint it like half the country is Republican, half the country is Democrat. But like, from being on the ground for you, what would you say is there a large contingent of, like, a part of me thinks that there must be a large contingent of people who are sympathetic to conservative parties because Bolsonaro won, right? So I don't know. I'm just trying to think about all these different populist movements that are popping up throughout the world, and they seem to be taking some sort of steam. So you can say like Trump as being part of the populist movement. with people being dissatisfied with shipping jobs overseas and in more outside influence and the foreign wars and things like that in the United States. And it seemed like Bolsonaro was much of the same vein, which is why, ironically, like the media was trying to paint Bolsonaro like Trump, right? The Brazilian Trump, you know, they do stuff like that. But you just start seeing like these different kind of populist movements. Maybe you could even say, I can't remember the president's name, but El Salvador.
Bukele.
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 Yeah. Where he's just like, you know what, screw this. I'm locking up all the criminals.
Yeah. With a difference, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
He's not a populist. You don't really see him coming to America or showing off. Or he actually, I was very surprised when I was at CPAC that on day one, he spoke and he was the last speaker. And hours later got on a plane and left. He did not speak on the same day that President Trump spoke, Eduardo Bolsonaro spoke, and Javier Milei from Argentina spoke, which he could have. Yeah, no, he went, did what he wanted to do, and left. And you don't often see him talking a lot. He's more the style of doing it and then showing. Yeah, so I understand what you say because he's one of the very few that does that. He's so into trying and bring his country back after, well, forever. El Salvador was the most dangerous place on earth. And they had over a year when where nobody has been murdered. How many people we see being killed every day here or in Brazil or in the UK, for example? So I like his style personally because he's got a job to do. As a president, he stayed for 5 years, changed the country. So he's going to stay for another 5 years. So you can see what a decade of hard work is. This is a generation.
Right.
A decade's a generation. And I am rooting for him because I hope that a lot of Bukeles will come after this. And let's remember that he, without being a populist, he was elected with 85% of votes. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I guess part of my initial question is more so of, usually there is, with these different things happening around the world, there's a reaction as to why, there's a reaction as to why we would give someone like Donald Trump an opportunity, right? Whereas, I don't know, years ago, we would have just laughed and it would have just been a joke presidential run, and then he would have been out after, like, he probably wouldn't even made it on a debate stage, you know, or something like that. No one would have taken him seriously. But it was just the right time for us to take him seriously and where people were ready for it. And so I'm curious if Bolsonaro's win is much of the same motivation as to why, you know, the Americans decided to take a chance with Trump. Was it much of the same reasons?
I believe so.
Okay.
I think that with the globalists getting involved in everything that we are doing, people start to think, wait a minute, it was not that long ago that I could do what I wanted. And now you can see, first of all, people need to understand there is a difference between globalization and globalism. There is a difference, and if you don't know, please go and study about it because it's truly important. But the globalists, the ones that are only interested in what they can gain, which is not money, because these people are filthy rich. It's power. It is control. It's I like to give things the real name. I don't mess around with synonymous. They're evil. Because this is a principle. What they are trying to achieve is to distance us, humans, people, ordinary Joes, from how we were created to be. Your freedom, which is a right given by God, not by man, which is in your amazing constitutions, the First Amendment, they don't like that. Because people with too much freedom, they start to think.
Yeah.
And they start to knowing the truth in what people are planning and intending to do. And they challenge and they don't accept. And they rebel against this too. Because after all, these people empowered, and I'm talking about the government level, they are our employees. So if they are doing wrong, we can go and change them in the ideal world. But these people are serving the globalists. So the movements that I've seen, that I've noticed going around the world, comes from people getting fed up of, of everything. And although we had the whole questionable elections here, and the same applies to different countries around the world, including Brazil, I feel if there is a benefit that can come out of the pandemic and the display of authoritarian behavior from all governments, is that people said, wait a minute, this is not right.
Yeah.
So people are like, wait. Even though those that believed at the beginning did exactly what they've been told, they start to think like, come on, you lied to me. And I'm not going to give you a second chance until you prove me wrong. And they're not. They're just getting worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you.
No,
You're
no.
thinking.
No, it's good. Sometimes it's good to reflect.
Always good.
It's always good. Yeah, it's just, I do see that aspect of control, watching the WHO say, actually not even just the WHO, but watching everybody comply to what the WHO is saying as if they're a governmental body that we must listen to, when really...
Who elected them?
No one. But everybody's just taking, hey, listen, the WHO says this, the WHO says, and it's just...
Trust the science.
Yes, right, that's right. Trust the science that is always changing, that is always being politicized. Trust it,
Mm-hmm.
1 week masks work, the next week masks don't work. Now you need 3 masks,
God.
So I do completely understand where people are coming from as far as distrust with the system, distrust when it comes to our governmental system, bureaucrats who are in charge. I think the lockdowns had that kind of effect where it made people stop for a second and see what was going on. Like, have you had a chance, because I know it's like, it seems like it was a while ago, but it wasn't that long ago. Have you watched like any footage of like lockdown measures?
Oh, yeah.
From just a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, man, we did that.
It feels like another life.
Yeah.
It feels like, what happened to humans?
Yeah.
I am absolutely sure that when my son has his children, they're going to look at these videos and think, my God, thank God I was not born in that era. and it's a fact that has been a study. I can't quote exactly when was done, but it shows that we are going to be the first ever dumbest generation. In terms of evolution, the next generation is always more intelligent. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not going to be our case. And the reality is the consequences of the lockdown, the endless consequences, from ruining lives, literally, from limiting education, personal development, human interactions, everything that came out from that. So when I look at that, most of the time we laugh about it, about how ridiculous people were in terms of, you cannot hug me, because I am vaccinated, but you are not.
Right.
Yeah. So you cannot hug me because you are the problem. When something called Vaccine should be designed to protect you, yourself, nobody else.
Right.
But you have to take the booster, okay, every 3 months. So it's bizarre that anyone ever fell for it. But when you look at the brainwashing techniques utilized by the globalists, they fund the big farms, they fund the governments and businesses, top businesses, and how they are all infiltrated and how we are all being played at. You can just join the dots. It's not brain science.
Right.
It's quite easy. The obvious is always easier to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I also remember during the pandemic watching like old like concert videos, and I was like, that was what it was like before the pandemic. You know, as I'm like cooped up in the house and not allowed to theoretically leave. The pandemic was weird for me as far as the lockdowns, because my life didn't really change that much as far as activities. Mm-hmm. So where it felt like everybody was just told to work from home, and I had to go into work every day. Mm-hmm. So like I remember driving on the highways and being like basically empty. You know,
Walking
like,
Dead.
Yeah, that's basically what it felt like. I was waiting for the theme song to go. But having to go in every day and, you know, I basically was able to do everything I wanted to do. It wasn't until like I would have to go to a store where like, oh yeah,
mask.
I have to wear a mask. And I remember like the first couple times just being so angry that I have to put this stupid thing on that I know is not doing anything for supposedly the most deadliest virus of all time. But I think the biggest frustration I had during the lockdown was that you weren't allowed to question things. And it's just like, we would question anything. Like, I got into a whole big thing with now a former friend, because I said, I've been alive, at the time it was, what was I, 37? I don't know, time flies because of the pandemic, but I asked her, I was like, I've been alive a long time. I've never heard of 6 feet. What is that?
Now we all know what 6 feet means.
Like you've heard things like, if you're sick, stay home. If you're sick,
avoid doing this.
Avoid doing this. Avoid doing that. Never in my life I heard stay away from someone at least 6 feet. Where did that come from? I know. And I remember I got to talk to Dr. J. Bhattacharya, and I told him the same thing, and he's like, it's complete fiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said, if you're in the room with someone, it's aerosol. So let's say you're sick and you walk in this room and you're breathing it in, and then you leave, it stays in that room. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you're 6 feet or not. It doesn't even matter if that person's in the room with you or not. Like, you into the room and it's still in the air, that's how you get it.
And it's a lot to do with your own immune system. Right. Because we are not robots.
Right.
So what is applicable to one person is not applicable to another one. So judging us the same way was a huge mistake too.
You mean to tell me someone who is generally unhealthy is more at risk of a virus?
In a normal day life? Of course.
Get out of here. I thought we all had the same possible outcome. I thought someone who is 75 is just as likely to die as someone who is 25.
Or a baby.
Or a baby. That's right.
I know.
That's why we got to put those tiny masks on those children's faces. I can't tell you how many people that red pilled. You're trying to put a mask on my 6-year-old? Like the amount of anger for months I saw from people. They didn't care about politics. All they wanted was those fucking masks off their kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I get it.
Me too.
I completely understand. So,
well, I was a rebel, so I never complied.
Oh, there you go.
Ever.
So I completely understand that.
Can I say something about this? Because you said about everyone being shut down, and that's the case of Brazil about everything. Mm-hmm. If you question anything, and it's literally, I cannot address enough. If you go, just say to the government, the current government, which is run by Lula da Silva, if he says, because, by the way, in Brazil, they're still telling people that they need to be vaccinated.
Oh.
Now, in 2024, March, they're still telling people that kids, babies, the Minister of Health in Brazil has declared that babies, I think from 6 months old, needs to be vaccinated, to the point that they will even tell schools that if the child doesn't show the vaccine cards, the school is entitled to refuse or to give a lecture or do whatever they want to with the parents and not allow the children to go in. They put that fear because the majority of people aren't aware of the rights because they have been forced to not learn about them, so they comply. So the fact that you weren't, for me, was, by then I was a bit awake, like really awake. When I saw everyone, an entire world, renowned doctors, renowned specialists being shut down for asking simple questions such as a real vaccine takes several years of development, then you got the trial, then blah, blah, blah. Every single one got shut down. And just one side knew it all. And everyone became a doctor overnight. Politicians, presenters, journalists, if they were supporting the agenda, they're being praised. And whoever was just asking, but why? They've been shut down. That for me was the nail in the coffin. I said, you are all bastards. You are monsters. And you want to use us as guinea pigs. And I am not.
Yeah. Yeah, it screamed there's a lack of common sense. Like, I don't think...
If common sense was common.
It was, But yeah, it was a complete lack of common sense. There was just so many people, and I'm speaking from like an American perspective. One of the things I love about being American is like, we sometimes... we follow the rules, but sometimes, if we can get by not following the rules, we'll do it, But it's like, it's a little bit of edginess about us. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, listen, you go to a store and they gave you, they didn't scan one item. You're like, I guess I got away with that. Hey, that's their problem. Like, you just kind of move on. Okay. Not everyone, if someone's going to disagree, like, I would never do that. Like a cashier gives you like a little bit too much money. It's like, some people will go back in, but some people are like, listen, I didn't realize until I got home. I'm not going all the way back.
They would lie.
Yeah.
But they don't benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But like, I might be using bad examples.
No, it's fine. I'm sure that there are people like that everywhere.
Yeah. So. But I mean, there's a little bit of renegade in the American spirit for a lot of people. And it was just very weird to see that in a matter of a couple weeks, a lot of people have that disappear within them, where they're unwilling to ask regular questions. And if they were willing to ask those questions, they were too scared to actually I'm not going to say that out to them. And I don't know, it was very disheartening to see. I will say that we had less people that complied than other places, like just flat out complying. But I think the thing that actually saved the United States was that we do have the freedom of speech. We do have the right to protest. And did some people cross that line as far as, sending the police and telling them, no, you can't do this? Yeah. But that didn't stop us from doing it, because we know we have that as a right. And for the most part, the courts, when it actually made it that far, would back it up. So the court system hasn't been completely perverted.
True. And that's why we are here with the Brazilians trying, because we still believe in the First and Second Amendment and your justice system.
Right.
Sorry. I just want to say that because that's the difference. And that's why it's important for Americans to know that you guys are the last thing standing against the total control.
It sounds very American centric to agree with you on that.
I am saying, I'm telling you all, it's not you, but you can, Americans, you arrive.
We have some bravado.
You do. Yeah. And you go to places, you arrive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's be honest. But in this case, please do.
Yeah.
Own it. Own your shit. Because it is. I'm serious. And the world, we are watching. And probably you guys can lead by example. It's a great opportunity to the U.S. to show why you are who you are and the true power that comes from the people. That's where your power comes from families, from regular men and women that have the right to have a gun to defend their families if you need it, that can go out and question and ask and do whatever they want to, because you also know that if you commit a crime, you go to prison. And in some place you can even have a death sentence.
Can I interrupt?
Please.
I think one of the issues, and this is where media comes into play, Americans know their rights, but they doubt their rights will be backed up. And part of the reason why they doubt it, whether it's actually being backed up or not, is a different story. And I think in many ways they are, if people are actually like really paying attention. But what ends up happening is that the mass media, they create narratives, right? In certain outlets, they create a narrative that benefits the left or benefits the right. But when we talk about the majority of the mainstream media, which is left-leaning, they manufacture narratives. But what ends up happening is, let's say someone who is right-leaning, they're like, CNN lies, right? They believe that, okay, CNN lies. But they still believe the narrative that they're placing, right? So you just gave an example, someone protecting their house. CNN might highlight a story of someone protecting their home from someone and shoots and defends themselves, and then they get in trouble, right? And so while they don't believe that CNN is telling the truth about stories, they do believe that, see, this is what happens when you do defend yourself. You get in trouble. But they take that one story and manufacture like a very nihilistic view about their rights. Yeah. So they know their rights. Yeah. They think that their rights no longer exist because someone in somewhere in the United States that doesn't live anywhere near them is experiencing a situation where their rights are being violated.
100% agree with you. And I think that's our job. We need to show every time they show one case, we need to show 5 cases where someone have to answer to the police because they killed someone, and then go maybe to trial because you have to, and then he's set free because he was defending himself.
Right.
It's our job, and we fail on that. Because if you pay attention, we are constantly discussing what they decided that we should be discussing. Yeah? If we ignore them and say, yeah, there was 1 out of 10, and I'll show you how. This person, this case, it's our job to do that too. And I'm holding myself accountable for that too. And I think we, the independent media, if I can call that, the independent freedom fighters or whatever, I think we need to start showing that for every bad person, there are thousands of good ones. It's like a tree, that the story about the tree, isn't it? That it grows without any noise. But when it falls, it causes a massive sound and destruction. So we are concentrating too much on what they tell us to do. Maybe we need to do something, which is tell the other side of the story. How guns have protected A, B, C, D, and Z person. And yeah, D got into trouble, but that's one off. So let's all maybe get together to make sure that that's a fair trial.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing, so as someone who didn't start off in media, but then got into media, and especially from a writer's perspective, you start becoming very vigilant about language, and then rhetoric, narrative. You start looking at all these different things differently than what most people see it as. And if you're someone who's good at what you do, you pay attention to the entirety. You don't just pay attention to what you're doing. So like, I'm a consumer, right? But I consume to analyze, not consume to verify, right?
Good.
So I'm consuming, and I'm analyzing, and I'm saying, wait, there's a lot of bullshit here, right? And there's a lot of manipulation, and it comes down to this, and I wish it was a question that most people ask themselves. Why do you know about this story? Why do you know about it? Oh, it's because this is what they're talking about. Now, why did they choose that story to talk about? There's a reason why.
Absolutely.
So if they told you to pay attention to this story...
You're hiding thing.
Exactly. Listen, there's a reason why we are talking about this. There's a reason, for example, George Floyd. There's a reason why we're talking about a random guy who's in Minnesota, right, who has no power, wasn't elected, not a celebrity. There's a reason why we're talking about that specific guy. And it's because let's say you believe the entire narrative and how he died was completely unjust and all that stuff, and you're not questioning any of that, there's still a reason why we're paying attention to him. And it's because there is a particular narrative and there's a particular exploitation that people can take from it, right? You're going to pay attention to it because it's shocking. And so they're going to keep feeding you, and everybody's just consuming. And then they look around them and everything is George Floyd and the world is falling apart. It's the same thing with like January 6th. Let's say you're on the left and you believe January 6th is the worst day in American history. They're going to keep feeding you that, guess what? Your neighbors were there. Everybody was there. Everybody's trying to tear apart this country. They're going to keep feeding you all this stuff. And I just started noticing that it's happening everywhere, right? You would think, like I'm saying this for myself, but like as someone who consumes a lot of right-leaning media as well, you would think there are transgender people everywhere. And I don't even know if I probably met 2 people who identify as transgender in my life.
In my town, in Britain, actually I know one.
One? Listen, there might be areas where it's disproportionately high, right? Like I've talked to someone who has her boyfriend works at Google, and they said like there's a ton of trans people who are there, right? Right. But that's a whole different story. But most people don't work at Google. They don't live near Silicon Valley or deal with that stuff. So it's like, but why are we talking about this, right?
Because we keep our TVs on.
Right.
Instead of switching into your podcast. Instead of listening to quality information and discussing things. You're saying you're a consumer, you consume things to analyze. I consume things to challenge myself or to criticism. And I'm always going and thinking, ooh, that wasn't really how I should have thought about it. Because now that I have this view, what can I do with this new knowledge? How can I improve myself? I always start with the self. Sorry if I'm self-absorbed or selfish or whatever.
No,
that's
it makes
how
you self-aware.
Well, what determines a nation? Religious, faith, language, and culture. And that's why, the subject, I think the AI will struggle because it doesn't have the 4th element that I believe is the most important one, which is the consciousness, the auto-criticism, which only humans can do that. We are constantly thinking, and what do you do? Just think? In my case, I challenge myself with what I'm learning. So I think we need to realize what you're saying is really serious. Whatever they are showing you, they have thought carefully what is it that they want you to discuss for the next 24 hours at least. How they want to gain advantage from that, whatever it is. Yeah. So if you put that aside and go and check in the real world what truly matters, because it's not the highlights, It's not the news. The fundaments, the fundamental stories are being suppressed by propaganda.
Mm-hmm. All the good is being drowned out by the bad. And the thing I try to tell people is that there will always be problems.
Absolutely.
There will always be a negative story. In this country, we have 330 million people that we know of, which is increasing that we don't know of. So there are bound to be a bad thing that happens somewhere in this country. United States is basically a continent, if you really think about it. It's a massive country that has all different types of cultural backgrounds and landscapes, you name it. We have basically every landscape. And so, yeah, there's bound to be something bad that happens somewhere in this country. But what makes it worse is that not just social media, but mass media, and we have 24-hour cycle of this stuff that just keeps coming and keeps coming. When I was a kid, we had, I don't know, it was like in England, but I was a kid, everybody would just turn on the 10 o'clock news. And then we get
around the table, everyone discussed on the sofa and being fed.
Right. We get like an hour worth of, hey, these are the top stories that are going on.
The taxi has been risen. Someone died in a car crash.
Right. There's a serial rapist. Don't go outside.
Don't go outside.
But then, the 23 hours of the day that you're not consuming the news, you can live your life and just have like that in mind. Like, okay, like I live in New Jersey. All right, there's a guy going around raping people at Central Park. Just be mindful if you go to Central Park. Most people don't, so then you might be okay. But you didn't get fed it constantly. You didn't get fed stuff that's happening thousands of miles away. You didn't get fed this on a constant basis from all angles. And it's like they realize that there's money to be had by monopolizing media. So they just keep
you control people through fear.
Yeah.
That's one of
and everybody. Yeah. This is beyond left or right. Everybody's being propagandized.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see it all the time with certain conservatives. I'm like, man, you guys are being propagandized. Like, you don't see what's happening here.
Yeah.
And they just don't. And even some of the stuff that's on the left, even if they question the source, they still tacitly accept the narrative that they're placing. So it's very disheartening that more people aren't not just like critical of the media. They're just critical of the media that they disagree with, right? That's on the other side. But they need to be critical of all media. Everybody's out to manipulate you, right? So you have to be aware, like, is it leaving out context here? Is this, let's say this story is 100% true, but why do they keep giving me this story after this story after this story over and over of the same scenario? Because they're trying to paint a picture. And why is that happening? Because there's a goal. So what's the goal? They're not asking these questions.
They don't. They're scared of the answer too. Yeah. Because it leaves you the sense of hopelessness.
That's it.
You feel like, oh, well, so it's not just me who's having a miserable life. Everyone else in the world, well, that's how it is. So why should we change? And it's not true.
Yeah.
It's not true. I agree 100% with what you're saying, because that's how they control. That's how they limit us. That's how they dictate what we should and shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. And that's how we fail as human beings, because we fail because we allow them to do that. Look, it only takes one thing, is to switch off the TV.
Turn it off, go outside.
And if people come to you and say, oh my God, did you see what happened? We're like, no, I'm not interested. Anyway, tell me, what have you done today? Tell me, how's work? How's life? How's your mom? Are you still working with the doing your voluntary work? Are you still helping the elderly? Are you still working in hospitals? How many babies have you delivered today? Anything. Mm-hmm. But we like to listen to the bad stories because it makes us feel better about ourselves. Why do we like to enjoy what other people's suffering? And it's literally, there is very old article by a lady called Laura Mulvey, and she wrote about the gays. She was doing this study when you go to cinemas and why people feel so comfortable in the darkness, sitting down and watching everything on the screen. And there's several outcomes, but one of them, it leads to the realization that we don't want to see other people happy. How bad is that for humans? To acknowledge that most of us get literally envious, jealous of someone else's life. I mean, it's your life. It's meant to be yours, not mine. Why can't I just celebrate that it's working well for you? Take that as an inspiration and maybe say, Adam, you help me because mine is pretty shit. That, or say, wow, I know what he's done. Maybe I need to have more of a positive attitude. I may need to train more. I need to educate myself more. I need to talk more positive things. I need to go to bed early because I know Adam goes to bed early and that's why he wakes up with, we don't like that. We like to see misery because we just go like, yeah, all right.
Yeah. Or make excuses. Oh, they were given that, or they were this. Yeah.
They were lucky.
They were lucky, right? Yeah. People, you know what I actually started doing? I started looking at people that I interact with, not about whether I disagree with them or agree with them, but more so their personality type and their behavioral patterns. So I started actually realizing that there are certain people that I generally agree with, but I noticed that they have a very terrible personality. So if you removed politics, they're just horrible people, just abusive in their behavior, sociopathic.
Absolutely.
Willing to destroy anybody, including people who are supposed to be their allies or even friends. They record people that they're supposed to trust. They treat their loved ones like shit. And these are public people. Mm. And you start realizing you put all that stuff together, you start building a profile. You can't find people who say stuff like that about me. Mm. Right? And so it's not you can show me one person who just has some sort of whatever. Okay, that's one person. But when you start adding up all these different people who have interacted with that person, I don't name names, but just I know of someone who's a big personality. Every time these people go on their shows, they have the same experience. And it's terrible. And I'm just everybody knows this.
And still, this person is there doing the show, and nobody knows the truth unless you experience it. So.
Yeah. No one knows. And here's the problem. The problem is, if you say that person's name, you're a hater.
Absolutely.
You're a hater. Oh, you're just coming after him because you're jealous. Adam, you're jealous. It's so that's what we're facing. And we're facing sycophants who also stick up for these sociopathic people, or just people who may be generally assholes, who aren't actually beneficial.
They're awesome. Yeah. Born and bred and happy to be assholes.
So, I just started looking at people, especially within the political space, like that. Remove politics. Are they a good person?
Remove the layers.
Remove all that stuff. Do they treat people with respect? Are they nice?
Are they nice? That's the best question.
That kind of thing.
Just nice. It costs nothing to be nice, to have manners. Absolutely nothing. In fact, makes your life so much easier.
Yeah. So I learned, especially, that's just my personality type. I'm polite, but I especially learned that doing customer service work, right? I would listen to people who are struggling to work with, we get general calls from the public and they're trying to do tech support and they're just struggling. And I was just polite with people and I met them where they were. So if you're an old lady, you don't know anything about computers, I would say, okay, I'm going to speak in a language that you understand. The guys who are struggling are trying to speak in their language that's advanced. she's not advanced. I'm going to speak to this lady in the language that she understands. I'm going to meet her where she's at and be polite. So if it means that we're going to take an hour to program your remote, we're going to take an hour to program your remote. And I'm encouraging them, and I'm not getting frustrated. Like, you're meeting this person where they are, and it teaches you to be patient, but it also shows you that being polite brings you so much farther. It's just that it's a weird thing within politics, is that people just glaze over the personality type. They're just like, yeah, they're giving it to them. They think that's like strength, when actually it's a major weakness.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And they use that, isn't it? Because as they are narcissists most of the time as well, they need the attention. They don't understand whether it's good or bad, okay? Because they don't have the empathy, the real one.
Yeah.
They don't care. As long as they are getting the attention, that's all that they truly want. And one thing that I want to say, one last thing that I want to say is like, whoever comes to your audience to meet you and imply that we should all be equals and treated equally in Brazil, should be equal, exactly the same in America, exactly the same in the UK. This person got issues. We are different. We have different culture. We have different backgrounds. We should be respected. And we can live really well on that basis of respect and tolerance and keeping our identities. Because that's what they say. We're going to create this for the whole world. Suddenly, there's no Americans or Brazilians or British. There's just like the world.
Right.
No, I'm not the world. You know, I am not. I'm happy to be Brazilian, British, in America. I'm happy to be Brazilian in Brazil.
Right.
Brazilian, British in Britain. I'm in Japan. I'm happy that way. And that I cannot say anything bad about being like that wherever I go in the world. But they want us to think that if we are not all in this box, there is something wrong.
Right.
With us. No. You are a psychopath and you are trying to control me under your idea that you are in charge.
Right.
Because you think that you know what is best for a Japanese, Brazilian, British, Canadian, American person. No, you don't. So we need to start calling them out and calling them exactly what they are, psychopaths.
I agree. We're nearing the end, so I'd like to ask the question, are you optimistic about the future?
I'm always optimistic. And the reason for being in is I know where my final resting place is going to be, which is in heaven with the Lord. Here we need to, he promised us, from what I believe, I'm a Christian, hardship here, yes, but a lot of happiness too, if we keep our eyes on him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jesus paid the ultimate price. He carried on the cross our sins, everything that we've done. So in him lies my certainty that here I need to do my job, make friends, talk to people, go through trouble, because I don't live in trouble. Mm-hmm. We go through, all of us. And in the end, I know, and I prayed to God that I will rest in heaven. So I'm always optimistic. And I have reasons to be, because I can see people are rising. Yeah. People are rising.
I'm with you on that. I'm equally optimistic as well. I'm optimistic in general, but I see the same thing. As much as we were talking about the problems, I still see there's a lot of good. I see a lot of good people and around the world. Mm. And I think going outside, talking to people, traveling, really getting a better understanding. I think a lot of us are living too much in this fictional world called the online space, and we're being consumed by content that verifies that everything is bad, you know, like one of the statements that really bothers me is like, bring the meteor, right? It's so melodramatic. I just don't like that. I don't like that at all. Because there's so much good, despite all the things that we're talking about, there's so much good, there's so much beauty in the world. And for people to throw it away because they're just being propagandized. So I think I need to try and do a better job. I'm trying my best, but like I need to probably do a better job as far as talking about narrative, propaganda, how people are being manipulated, regardless of political spectrum, and what we can do to escape it. And it's not necessarily listen to what Adam says, but it's just about thinking for yourself. I could be wrong, but you think for yourself, but just be aware that there's an attempt to manipulate you. There's an attempt to make you crazy.
And you find out that I'm wrong, please come and share it with me because I want to learn.
Same. I've had people tell me like in a critical way, they've reached out to me privately and said, hey, you're actually off about this. And we talk about it. And I'm like, thank you for telling me. And I stopped saying that. Absolutely. Because they showed me and I was like, oh yeah, okay. I didn't know that. Okay. Because my goal isn't to be always right, you know, but there's a lot of people, their goal is to be right and they're going to double down, even though it's verifiably wrong and bad, you know. So I don't know. We need to stop platforming the narcissists. We need to stop platforming the sociopaths.
And platforming the good people.
And platforming the good people like yourself.
And you.
Thank you. This was great. I know this was like a quick get together, but it
we can do part 2 soon.
Yes,
I'm sure. I'm sure there is no rest for the wicked.
Hopefully, I get to come to London this year.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Adam takes the UK.
I've been twice with Breaking Bad.
Well, really?
We didn't know each other.
All right then.
You thought I was just going. No, we didn't know each other. Yeah, hopefully sometime this year or sometime soon, someone invites me to come out there. But thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a safe flight back home. I know you're leaving tonight. Okay. And we'll stay in touch.
Yes, we will. Thank you very much to your audience. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And hopefully you can do that again soon.
Yep, absolutely.